Most people in the Hawkeye State love to see those yellow and black stripes take over a field, but not if you're a vegetable farmer, because those would be cucumber beetles. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Liz Colby, and I'm with Practical Farmers of Iowa. Accompanying me behind the scenes and providing technical support is Hannah Grospeach. We will shortly be broadcasting live with Carmen and Maja and their entire Sundog crew to learn about the pest and disease pressures they most commonly find on their farm and their strategies and practices for keeping them in check. But first, like an old movie, we start with the credits at the top. We'd like to thank our major sponsors for their support of our virtual field day season. Their support helps make this virtual field day season possible, which features over 60 virtual field days. And guess what? You can attend all of them free of charge. Thank you, sponsors. Practical Farmers of Iowa is a farmer-led nonprofit based out of Ames. We specialize in farmer-to-farmer knowledge sharing and farmer-led research, some of which you'll see today on Farm. The mission to equip farmers to build resilient farms and communities. All are welcome at PFI. We invite you to learn more about our organization and access our vast collection of resources at practicalfarmers.org. This virtual field day will run until 1:05 p.m. If you have questions for Carmen and Maja during the field day, please type them into the comment box on Facebook, and I'll do my best to relay your questions during our discussion. Also, at the conclusion of this event, please give us your feedback via the online survey that we'll also post in the comment box on Facebook. Virtual events are new to us, and with your help, we are excited to learn and improve throughout the summer. I'm also going to put in the chat box right now a link to a PDF, which is a handout that the Sundog team had prepared to you, and it gives some exact details about some of their preparations for their spray products. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Sundog crew and let them take it from there.
Hello. So we'll do quick introductions first. I'm Carmen.
My name's Carlos.
I'm Maja. I'm Angel. I'm Helena. And we're excited to welcome you sort of to the farm on this virtual field day. We have filmed some videos in the field. So we're going to show those to you in a little bit so you can actually see what some of our pest and disease management looks like, as well as what the fields look like right now. But I wanted to start by having us talk a little bit about some of the sort of philosophy and strategies behind some of our specific practices for pest and disease management. When we first started talking about doing this field day about pest and disease management, I was both sort of like excited and nervous about it. On the one hand, it's something that we've been working really hard on to do a good job with managing pest and disease in order to have like really high quality vegetables. But it's also something that I think is really challenging. And I feel like I have attended a lot of different conference sessions and like workshops, that kind of thing, about a certain, pest problem, for example, and left it feeling confused and like I didn't know how to implement it on my farm. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. And so my goal here is for us to try and make this like as manageable for everyone as possible for what we're actually actively doing. And part of that was the handout, which we'll talk about that at the end of the actual some of the actual products we use and how much we use. And one of the biggest challenges, I think, with all of this is that most of the products are made for larger scale farms. And so the directions are often given in how to measure the product in gallons per acre. And we're in many cases trying to do one or two, 200-foot rows of something that is having a particular problem. So we've done some of the math and are excited to share that. But that's kind of the goal for this workshop, is to kind of explain in practice what we actually do. And a little bit about our farm. Sundog Farm is the home of Local Harvest CSA, which is the primary way that we market our vegetables. We pack 150 shares every week. Right now, this was our first week of our summer season. We also do spring and fall CSA. So what that means is we're delivering vegetables 2 families from April through Thanksgiving. And so we grow a lot of different vegetables over a long season. And so that presents a lot of different challenges when it comes to pest and disease control, because there's so many different pests and diseases at the end of the day. So that being said, talk a little bit about sort of how we've come to our practices. And part of it is that we think that a key to our CSA and having a successful community supported agriculture program is having really high quality vegetables. And so effectively managing pests and diseases is really important.
Pest and disease damage is not only the things we do with the vegetables, we also handle them very carefully up until the point of harvest in order to reduce the amount of seconds that we have. We give a lot of vegetables away to different organizations.
Yeah, so we're really trying to reduce as much waste as possible, and part of that is having less damaged crops. So so that's sort of one of our main goals, is just having less damage. And one of the places where it starts the management of pest and disease on our farm is really carefully planning our rotation. We have a limited amount of acreage on this farm that we can grow vegetables. We're on a hilltop. If we were actually on a tour, you would see our spectacular hills. And so we are trying to produce a lot of shares and don't feel like we can use more ground. And so that means that we very carefully plan where things are going to go every year. And as you probably know, the first step to reducing a lot of different pests and diseases is rotating crops to a different section every year. And so I think that that's super important, and it's also super important to plan that. And part of planning that for us is that we want to have really high quality and healthy plants rather than a lot of unhealthy plants. And so we space our plants a little bit further apart than some folks might, and try and really work on weed control and that kind of thing. So quality over quantity is kind of a theory that we work on. And another thing that I think has helped us is we also have sheep. So we have a lot of pasture, and we have field edges that we manage, but try and let be a little bit more wild so we can have habitat for pollinators and other beneficial insects. And we also rotationally graze. We have a few dairy goats around the edges of many of our fields. We do that carefully because of food safety, so that we're not so that we're not walking through where they've grazed. But we also think that helps manage that area. And we think that beneficial insects can help with a lot of different pests, and by managing a lot of habitat. I will say that the grazing has helped us, because one thing that we don't want in those wild areas is too many thistles or parsnips. And so we either graze or mow to reduce that. And we always plan the field map in advance. I think this is a big challenge for some folks who have more limited space like we do, is making a snap decision like, oh, I'll just put the broccoli over here. And then that can throw out your entire plan. So we try to really think all of this through in the winter, lots of spreadsheets when we have more time, so that we don't make any snap decisions like that. And then I think the final piece that has to do with the rotation is that we grow multiple successions of almost everything now, so that if you do have a specific disease problem, those infected plants can be removed, and you know that you have more coming on. So a specific example of this is zucchini often has a lot of squash bugs problems later in the season, different diseases, there's lots of stuff. So we try to always be starting more zucchini. I think we're planning 4 or 5 different successions this year, so that we can pull out the old plants and have new ones coming on, and we don't have to be dealing with that forever. Same with basil and downy mildew. We've had some problems with that. And so just planning for more has been really helpful.
So not only are we planning all the crop rotations in the winter and thinking about the big picture during the down season, it's also really critical that day to day we're going out in the fields and looking like, okay, this area looks like it has some cucumber beetles, or oh, this area is starting to get more thistles. And so those scouting walks every day, or as much as you can go, is very important to just make sure that you have an eye on things. And not only are you like watching the progression of your crops, it's important to see what sort of insects are around. Are they good? Are they bad? And knowing or being able to identify the bad ones is especially important, so you can get rid of them.
And we just want to highlight that even though we're talking about the products that we use today, we do not advocate for spraying too much. And just because the products we are using are organic certified, it doesn't mean that you can just use them a lot and not have anything bad happen. And one of the main reasons for that is if you overuse one product, the pests that survive will likely build resistance to the product, and then it will be less effective as you continue trying to use it on a growing population that is resistant to it. And so for this reason, we rotate between 2 or more products with most of our protocols, and we spray only when necessary. And we always do our best to follow the label. As Carmen said, it's really hard to understand sometimes how to apply the, the ratios that are like meant for really large scale producers for small scale producers. But it's something we're working on and like would like to provide as much info as we have. And we use this theory of rotating types of products and not overusing them. Also, when we're managing the internal parasites with our sheep. So we rotate between classes of wormers. We try not to worm very often. And we always try to use the right amount. And that's just something cool that's like the theory behind it applies to both vegetables and livestock, which I think being a diversified farm has helped us to sort of like understand the philosophy behind what we're doing. And then we also wanted to say some of the products that we're recommending today are like pretty expensive, from Johnny's, etc. But we think that it's worth it to use some more expensive products if you know how to store them properly, know how to use them properly, and like they work better. So that's just a note.
And we are not certified organic, but use only products that are OMRI approved. And so I think that sometimes is why some of them are pretty expensive. And we also want to say that one of the reasons why we wanted to talk about it is having them on hand ahead of time is critical, because with most of this stuff, you want to, as soon as you notice something, you want to take action. And so I have found that if I don't have the thing on hand, then if you have to order it, then you're not going to use it appropriately, because then it's going to get out of hand. So it's really helpful to plan ahead of time what your protocol is going to be.
So we spray, but we try not to spray too much. And there's some other things that we do that are non-chemical options for pest and disease prevention. So we remove diseased plants as soon as we see them, or as soon as we can. And we try not to harvest off a diseased plant before harvesting our other plants. So like we were just out in the spinach field yesterday, and we have a little bit of disease in the middle of the field. So we started at the top and at the bottom, and then came in towards the middle. So we finished off with that section that looks a bit more diseased. We try not to weed or harvest when it's wet. So we're not walking into the fields with muddy boots, and that moisture isn't spreading around easily. We always sanitize harvest knives before and after use. And before and after use, like before and after each crop. So we'll go out and harvest spinach, come back, sanitize that knife, and then go out and harvest something else with that knife. And then row cover we think is really great. Like Carmen said, we're up on a hill, so it's really windy here. So that hasn't worked great for us. But in general, row cover is good for pest prevention as well.
Great. So that's I would say like an overview of kind of sort of our general thoughts, but behind our protocol. And now we're excited to show some videos of a scouting walk that we took and what we're looking for.
All right, so Hannah, why don't you go ahead and play the introduction video, and then we'll go right ahead into the cucumber beetle video.
Hello, today we're here at Sundog Farm. We're the crew of Local Harvest CSA. My name is Maya.
I'm Angel.
I'm Helena.
I'm Carlos.
And I'm Carmen. And we're excited to take you on a little field walk. One of the most important parts of pest and disease control is scouting walks to look for any potential problems. So we're going to take you to a few different areas on the farm to talk about what we look for and how to address it. So let's go.
Are we gonna go to the next video?
Yeah, Hannah, go ahead and play the cucumber beetle video as well. Oh boy, blooper reel. Here we go.
We're in our cucurbit field, and here we're looking for cucumber beetles. Hopefully we won't find them today because we just sprayed. But one reason that you want to minimize your cucumber beetle population is that it can cause a disease called bacterial wilt, and it's caused by a bacterium that overwinters in the adult stomach. So the adult cucumber beetles can actually live through the winter by hiding in outcrops and like a little bit warmer places. And if the bacterium in their stomach exists, and then they come out in the spring and summer and start eating the young cotyledon leaves or the small leaves, they can spread this bacterium and cause bacterial wilt, which is that disease. You can tell that your plants have bacterial wilt by seeing if they wilt and if they have like a really yellowish look to them. The way that it spreads is the adult feeds on the leaves, and then it deposits this bacteria, and it can cause blockages in the vascular system of the cucurbits, which is how it can cause that wilting effect because the plant isn't properly getting its nutrients to all the leaves. So to minimize that, you want to get rid of your cucumber beetles.
All right, and we are all experiencing watching ourselves on video, which is one of the most awkward human experiences. But I'm curious for the Sundog team, what are you seeing in that video that you think looks good, or that you think we want to explain more? Anything there?
Yeah, well, I guess do want to note that Angel mentioned that we had sprayed the day before, and you could see the effects of that. And I think the next video that we're going to do is sort of like what we used for that, which was a mix of an organic product called Pyganic that actually kills the beetles, as well as a clay, the surround clay. And so you could see in that video the white clay on the leaves, and that acts as a little bit of a barrier. And we're going to talk about that in the next video, I think.
And another note with the bacterial wilt, to be able to identify that it is bacterial wilt, if the plant is looking wilty and yellow and diseased, and you like snap off a bit of the cucurbit stem and it comes out pretty sappy, that's also a good sign. Well, it's not, it's a bad sign that you have bacterial wilt.
I think one more thing.
Yeah.
One more thing, just with the clay, in Iowa, especially in spring and early summer, we've been getting a lot of rain. So we've been having to like try to reapply after it rains. And so it's been kind of like a balancing battle of trying to get to the plants before the cucumber beetles do every time after it rains.
We're gonna next watch the video of Carlos mixing up the surround. And if folks have that handout, we are in the cucumber beetle section. So if you want to see some specifics, to be prepared to ask questions in the comment box, you can use that handout to sort of help guide you. So Hannah, why don't you go ahead and play the mixing video?
Today, I'm mixing up surround clay and pyganic to spray on our zucchini, summer squash, and cucumbers. The clay is known as a barrier to prevent flea beetles from eating the leaves, and the pyganic is an organic insecticide which kills the beetles that are on the plants. Spray clay on the plants is a practice that comes from Egypt originally. Today I am mixing up 3 gallons of the spray. So I am starting by adding 1.5 gallons of water and 60 cups of the clay. Personal protective gear is a must. Let the clay sink in. Do not add any more until it is fully dissolved in the water. After the clay sinks in, shake it. Then add 1.5 ounces of organic. Finally, add the extra 1.5 gallons of water. Shake at least 30 seconds. Once it is shaken up, there will be a white milky substance that you will then spray onto your cucumber.
All right. So a lot of times I hear about people getting their nozzles clogged by clay. Does letting it dissolve all the way in first prevent some of that, or what do you think those issues are caused by? What are some common mistakes that people make with this?
Yeah, well, letting the clay dissolve in the water and then shaken, not stirred, is the method that says in the bag.
Yeah, and we haven't had any nozzle problems since we started really doing the intensive shaking and letting it sink in like that. So I think that has been super effective. I also think the other thing is we always wash out the sprayer like very well afterwards, and so probably keeping your nozzle clear in general, that's a good practice.
Awesome. So do you want to go to the Brassica video, or is there anything you want to say first from the handout team?
I would just maybe highlight kind of what Maya mentioned earlier, is that we usually, so you can use the clay as a prevention without any insecticide in it, just as a barrier. So we usually do that first. When the plants are planted, you can actually like drench the plants and plant them with the clay directly on them. And that just acts as a barrier before any beetles show up. Maya did mention that the rain makes that very challenging. So usually after the first rain, where it really washes the clay off, is when we start to see a lot of cucumber beetles. It's something that happens every year. They're pretty bad this year already. And so from when you start to see, you know, several per plant is when you want to add the insecticide to mix with the clay. So you can start with the clay, then add an insecticide. And you don't want to overuse one. So far we've just sprayed twice, I think, and we've used the pyganic, but I think that we're getting to a point where we might need to consider something else. So that's just something to remember, is to rotate the different products.
Excellent. Well, shall we go to the Brassica video? And Helena, if you can put your video or your audio on mute while we play the video, I think that might cut down. We're getting a little bit of wind noise during the video.
Welcome to the Brassica field. You'll also notice there's a little bit of fennel in this field, but it's primarily brassicas. So this is where we have all of our summer collards, kale, kohlrabi, cabbage, and broccoli, and several different successions of it. And something that is important that we do that helps us reduce a lot of different pests and diseases is by having a wider row spacing. So I know that a lot of folks like to plant pretty intensively. And we have found that we have all of our rows in a field like this are 36 inches apart, which provides a lot of airflow. And this has allowed us to address especially some diseases like black rot pretty quickly. And we use a cultivating tractor to weed crops like this. In some other fields, we use black plastic mulch, but on brassicas, garlic, onions, that kind of thing, potatoes, we almost exclusively cultivate because we also think that weed control is a very important part of disease management and prevention. And so you can see this year we have actually not really hand weeded at all and have been able to manage the weeds pretty effectively just with a cultivating tractor. It is a lot of work and has taken several years to get to the skill to be able to do that, of learning, but I think that it's well worth it, and would definitely recommend cultivation for crops like this.
So let's talk about the pests and disease we actually look for in the Brassica field. The two pests that primarily impact us are flea beetles and cabbage worms. And we have already treated our brassicas for flea beetles this year, and we made sure to tackle the problem early so that we could interrupt the life cycles of the flea beetles before they reproduced and we had like a really big population. So we're feeling pretty happy with that. And something to note about when you're scouting is time of day is really important. It's the middle of the day right now. We just finished up harvest day. And so even if we did have some flea beetles, it would be the wrong time of day to find them because they would be hiding under the leaves during the heat of the day. So first thing in the morning and even in the evening will really be your friend. And then the other pest that we look for in this field is cabbage worms. And they're little green worms. And one of the best indicators for them is actually when you see the cabbage moths, the little white moths flying in your brassica field, and they're what delivered the cabbage worms to the field. So we will talk about what we use to treat both of those pests in the handout. And then the final thing is black rot, which Carmen's going to talk about.
Yeah, so black rot is a very common brassica disease, and like I mentioned, I think a wide spacing has helped us manage and prevent that. But the other thing that we do that's very important is that we try to not enter most fields, but especially fields like brassicas that are have some disease problems, is we try to not enter them when wet because that can spread the disease around if you're starting to get it and have it noticed, and can kind of just like generally make things worse. So that involves, we try to not harvest when it's too wet, spray when it's too wet, hand weed, anything like that. Try and do that when it's dry. I think that's helped us a lot. And the other thing, like most pest and disease management, you want to act as soon as you see something. So when we have noticed black rot, we've had pretty good success pulling out the plants that have it the worst right away. And we've noticed that that can slow or sometimes almost even stop the spread. So we've also noticed that we've had the worst black rot problems in really rainy seasons. So if you are, if it's very rainy, that's something that we're like more on the lookout for. And the final thing that we haven't talked very much about, but I think is an important part of all of this, is selecting varieties that will grow well for you. And some varieties have actually been bred to have some resistance to common diseases. I know there's some new basil varieties that say they have downy mildew resistance, which is exciting. We haven't tried them yet, but I think that's something to look for if you're having a particular problem. And the best way to find out if it works is to try it. So what we actually are, along with some other great farmers, are cooperating in a research trial to see which kind of cabbage works best for us in the summer. It's really nice to have cabbage in our CSA boxes in the season before tomatoes, so sort of like July, early August. But it can also be hard to produce cabbage then for both pest and disease reasons. So we have 4 different varieties that we're trialing. They're in this row, and we're going to measure weight, size, if they experience pest or diseases, to sort of scientifically determine if there's a variety that works best.
And I'll let Helena get the unmuted there.
I think
Okay. So team, what follow-up do you have after showing folks that Brassica video?
Oh, I guess I wanted to add some of the things we talked about not going into the field when wet, and the sort of principles behind disease management really apply for tomato blight, which is the other primary disease that we face. And so we're very careful. We've never harvest. That's the thing we're most careful about, I would say, is we really never harvest the tomatoes when the plants are wet, because we know that we're gonna have that disease every year in some way. And so that's just been the best way. So it really involves a lot of looking at the forecast.
And I know all of you look like you're wearing very clean clothes right now, which could be because you're on video, but there's also sort of a hygiene element to your pest management, disease management.
Thanks, Liz. Yeah, well, that is one thing, is we do try to wear clean clothes when entering fields, because you can spread especially some plant diseases into the field or around the field. And so I would say we're most careful about that, especially like during tomato season, wearing fresh clothes when we're going to harvest that. And this is another place that I would say, like, having a pretty integrated livestock and vegetable farm is challenging and important, because we also change our clothes after we handle the livestock, which is every day. So having a full range of vegetable shoes, livestock shoes, same with clothes.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's useful information. So we just have a few minutes left, and I wanted to make sure that you covered everything that you wanted to from the handout, but we also have another video. So why don't we play the high tunnel video, and then you can take a look at that sheet and get prepped for those last comments. So Hannah, can you go ahead and roll the high tunnel video? Oh, and Helena, will you mute your
Rolling. Hello, welcome to one of our 2 high tunnels. We primarily grow greens in our high tunnels, and we do so very intensively in order to really maximize the space we have for season extension. And most of the rest of the farm, we're going to talk more about this. We use pretty wide spacing to promote airflow and have really healthy plants. So this is the one exception to that, where we're planting intentionally more intensively. And so that means that we have to do some things to really carefully manage the space in order to prevent pests and diseases.
Space. Our space is very limited in the high tunnel, and I eliminate all the weeds to give our plants more space and more nutrients in the soil.
And in addition to space, other ways that we manage pests and disease in the high tunnel are by carefully managing the temperature and humidity through ventilation. We are pretty intense about opening the tunnels in the morning and closing at night according to how hot or cold it is outside. And also we water very intentionally. We don't want to overwater any of the crops, because then they can get a disease called bottom rot. But we also don't want to underwater them, because we want them to grow.
And there's 2 main pests and diseases that we look for in here. One is aphids, and the primary way that we control the aphids is, as Maya mentioned, the temperature and humidity control. So that's about really intentional venting in here. And then the other thing that Maya also mentioned is the bottom rot, and that's about being very careful with watering, especially when it's hot like it is today. So we'll water for not quite as long, but more frequently. So it's been a lot of learning to get all of this controls right, but I think that we've had really good success controlling both bottom rot and also aphids without having to use even very many organic pesticides or products.
Okay, so we hit on some of the aphids in there, and we've talked a little bit about the tomatoes. But looking over your handout in the last minute, is there anything else you wanted to make sure you can highlight for the viewers?
Well, one thing we do use in our tunnels is drip irrigation.
Yeah, which is, I think, a super important, thanks Carlos, part of the moisture control for the bottom rot is like it is underneath, but you can water like for a limited amount of time more frequently, very easily. And it definitely helps. We use almost exclusively drip irrigation, which can help with a lot of different diseases. Good call.
Awesome. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time for today, but we'll see more of you guys in just a few weeks. Hannah, if you could pull up that last slide so we can close it up here. The next time we come back to Sundog Farm, we'll be celebrating the silver anniversary of Local Harvest CSA, and we'll also see some more about how they integrate grazing their sheep and maybe a couple of their goats around their vegetable farm. So some more intentional integration there. In the meantime, you can follow Local Harvest CSA on Facebook, and you can also follow PFI on Facebook and Instagram both. And you can find the full list of our upcoming virtual field days at our website. I saw Hannah posted in the comment box the evaluation for this field day. If you take that, you'll be entered to win a PFI water bottle, and more importantly, we'll receive your feedback. Hey, Carmen, Maya, Carlos, Helena, Angel, thank you guys so much for putting all this together and joining us today. We have this handout available on our website on your field day page. So if you lose the link, you can find it again. We'll see you next time. And until then, stay healthy and enjoy the sunshine.
Thanks, Liz.
Yeah, goodbye,
Thank
Liz.
you.
Thank you, Liz.